undocumented immigrants did not want her last name published for fear of being deported, crossed the border through Tijuana in 1988. She looked for legal help from a notary, mistakenly thinking that a notario indicates a legal expert, as it does in many Latin American countries. She was eventually ordered out of the country, but the Obama administration deprioritized deportations of people who had committed no major crimes, and it allowed her to live and work in the United States as long as she checked in with an immigration agent each year. Lydia raised 4 children, all citizens, and sent them to public schools in Sun Valley, a suburb north of Los Angeles. She and her husband bought a home there, paid off their mortgage, and bought a second home nearby. Now she is a candidate for deportation once again and is anxious each time she steps out of her home. "I am in limbo," she said. "I am afraid I will go out and never come back." So this is actually rather long. I don't want to go on and on. This is a number of other things, of other circumstances like that. But let me get on to the next part. Some people endure long journeys by foot, train, boat, and smugglers to make it across the border, but for an increasing number of immigrants, illegal status arrives overnight without a single step. And each year from 2007 to 2014, more people joined the ranks of the illegal by remaining in the United States after their temporary visitors' permits expired than by creeping across the Mexican border. A partial government estimate released last year said that 416,500 people whose business or tourist visas had expired in 2015 were still in the country in 2016. That does not count people who came here on student visas or temporary work permits. And this goes on to give some examples of people who overstayed their visa. Finally, okay, here we go. Nearly 409,000 migrants. Okay, I'll start earlier. Teresa Reyes Wright and her daughter. Oh, sorry. There we go again. I'm reading captions. On Valentine's Day, Rogelio Ortiz stopped by the local immigration office in Charlotte, North Carolina, to update his family's address. He was seeking asylum in the United States after arriving from Honduras last February, fleeing arms traffickers who threatened him after he asked them to stop storing weapons in his brother's house. 15 minutes later, an officer came out to tell Mr. Ortiz's wife, Teresa, and daughter Abigail that he had been detained. Without realizing it, Mr. Ortiz, 49, had already lost his asylum case. He had been deported 14 years ago after a previous stint working in the United States and was ineligible. Since 2009, migrants seeking asylum from Mexico and Central America's Northern Triangle region, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, have surged across the border at a relentless pace, fleeing gang violence and poverty. Many of them are children traveling alone or women with children. Nearly 409,000 migrants were caught trying to cross the United States southwestern border illegally in the 2016 fiscal year, an increase of 23% over the previous year, according to government statistics. Many ask for asylum, but in most cases the requests are denied. While they wait, a process that can take years to conclude, they are often released to move freely into the country. That can mean disappearing beyond the reach of immigration officials. The system has infuriated those who advocate tougher enforcement, prompting the Trump administration to propose detaining asylum seekers at the border or forcing them to wait it out in Mexico. "I know coming into the country illegally is a crime, but millions of people have done it, and now we come here asking for help," Teresa said. Now she seeks work to pay for a plane ticket. Teresa plans to renounce her own asylum claims to reunite once again with her husband, this time back in Honduras. So Teresa is someone that we saw earlier that we didn't... Mr. Ortiz's wife, Teresa. Sorry. Anyway. So there's some information about immigrants. I was hoping it would get a little more into the different reasons why people come here. But basically, they come here searching for a better life. I can't think of very many reasons to uproot yourself from where you live and to go to some country you don't know, live amongst people you don't know, particularly in situations where you're in danger of being deported, unless you have a pretty strong incentive. A lot of people from Central America are fleeing violence. They're fleeing political instability. They're fleeing poverty. People come here for lots of reasons: to be with family members, to be to get better work than they can get at home, to be free to express themselves in ways that they can't express themselves at home, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of migrants and a lot of refugees are come because they have nowhere else to go. I mean, there are other places they can be, but there's nowhere else that they think of as safe or secure or whatever. So, jumping back to morals and ethics, morally speaking, I feel that we are obliged to at least try to help as many people as possible who need our help. That doesn't mean we take care of everybody. It doesn't mean you just come in and say, all right, here's a house, here's a bunch of money, here's all this stuff. I mean, you know, we're not situated to be able to do that. This is a very rich country, and we could do a lot of more of that sort of thing if we really wanted to, if that were a priority. But we have other obligations and other problems that we need to be dealing with. So while we can't just hand things to people on a platter who are in need, we can certainly provide assistance and help. Or we can just simply stay out of their way and say, okay, you're looking to improve your life, come on over here. There's a lot of room. There are a lot of places that you could go. Do your best and good luck to you. You know, that to me seems like the least that could be asked of a rich country like this one, is to allow people in, give them a chance, let them see what they can do for themselves, and if they prove to be a danger or a liability, then then you deport someone. If someone is a criminal, then put them in jail, I guess. I don't know. I mean, do what you do with criminals. That's a whole other subject, like how you deal with criminals. But I'm saying my basic point is that as long as people are not abusing what privileges there are, I see no reason why we should not allow them to come here, and give them an opportunity to see what they can do with what they can find here. We have lots of dead and dying cities all over the Midwest, certainly. I don't know how often you drive around, but once a year I tend to drive up to the Dakotas for a family thing. And I go through a lot of small towns along the way, and there are a lot of small towns that are just kind of lifeless, you know. There are a few people that live there. There are maybe one store. There might be a gas station. You know, there's very little that goes on there. But you can see empty buildings and boarded up places and empty lots where there used to be buildings, and realize that there used to be sort of an economy to this town and a reason to live there. But the sort of corporatization of the country has created this thing where Walmart comes in and just destroys local commerce in so many places. So now you have these smallish towns with, every so often you have a big Walmart or some other big kind of we've got it all sort of chain store that's grocery, clothing, odd goods, whatever that people might need, multiple little small mom and pop stores all squished together into this big chain thing where all the money and profits go away somewhere else. And the only benefit to the community are the goods that they can purchase there, which they wouldn't have otherwise because there's no other business in town, and a handful of jobs for people that live in the community. There are a lot of places like that in this country where an immigrant who's maybe starving or in danger of death squads or any number of things would be glad to live there and perform some very small job for some very small amount of money just to be safe, just to wake up in the morning and go, okay, nobody's going to come by and shoot me today. And, we're not going to starve because there's food somewhere and we can get it. And I will just go wash windows all day long and make a few dollars, and then I'll go buy myself food. There are lots of opportunities that people could avail themselves of if we just simply let them in. And then these towns wouldn't be dead and dying. They would be growing, because the more people you have, the more they need stuff. The more they need stuff, the more entrepreneurial people will say, I can provide stuff. And then the people will pay for it. And then you have a thriving community over time. But it seems like we would rather let those hundreds or thousands of communities just die than invite people in from somewhere else who might happen to speak a different language or just look different than the other people in town. That's how weird our sense of right and wrong has become. It is more right to keep people out and retain what little you have, even if you're not doing anything with it, than it is to share that with people who need to, at the risk of losing your control or your comfortable familiarity over how things are done or how things should be done. That's weird. So anyway, I did something that I really was hard for me to do earlier, but I looked up something on Trump's website, the White House website, as a matter of fact, talking about Trump's accomplishments. And I was curious, okay, what are the grand moral ideas that he claims to stand for? So it starts out at the beginning. It says, President Trump is working hard to implement his America First platform, continuing his promise to the American people, or whatever. That right there, America First. I don't know how else to put it, but that is selfish. All right? There's no other way to describe that. If I said, from now on, I'm going to do a Tom first way of going through life. I'm going to go through life Tom first, me first. So his saying America first is just saying, all right, we're going to put our needs and desires and wants above everybody else. As if we haven't always been doing that. I mean, think about it. When has America not prioritized its own needs over anyone else's? But at least at some point we, tempered that with acts of, we have plenty so we can be generous. But America First seems to be all about me, and us. So under that, he talks about tax cuts. Okay, well, who does tax cuts appeal to? First, we have America First. That is us before anyone else. Tax cuts. That means we pay less for everything, right? You want government to do things, but I don't want to pay for it, so I'm paying less. Again, it's selfish. And there's a long list of tax cuts and consumer blah, blah, blah. Ending job-killing regulations. President Trump is rolling back wasteful and costly regulations that have stood in the way of hardworking Americans. Well, there are probably some wasteful and costly regulations, but most regulations, as we all know, come about because someone has done something wrong. It's just like you read the tag on some new appliances that, like a hairdryer, do not use in the bathtub. Well, that seems pretty obvious. It's electric. You're going to be sitting in water. You don't want to be holding something that's plugged into the wall while you're sitting in the water. Why is that on there? Because someone somewhere has done that and been hurt by it. And so they don't want you to do that again. They don't want you to get hurt. So most regulations exist. There are some that go overboard. But most regulations exist to protect from someone doing something that they shouldn't do. And here it's just making it seem like every regulation is harmful rather than there for a reason. There's a number of things. For example, the Paris Climate Agreement is considered a bad deal that harmed America's economy and workers. Well, what was the climate agreement about? It was protecting the climate. Might that hurt some economy and workers? It might, but it's protecting the climate where we all live. It's ludicrous. It's like turning good into bad. This is really doublespeak in a lot of this stuff. Promoting fair and reciprocal trade. Okay, we all know about his tariffs that we're paying for his ability to hold other people's feet to the fire, basically, when it comes to trade. So he's not making them pay. He's making us pay for his punishing them. Advancing American energy dominance. Dominance. There you go. There, I'm yet to see anything that's a big, grand, moral, optimistic belief in the greater good of humanity here. Protecting the American people and homeland. Trump is enforcing our immigration laws, protecting American communities and American jobs. What is he protecting them from? From people coming here. It's called on Congress to fund a wall along the southern border. It's just nuts. Okay, protecting America's communities. Restoring law and order so that Americans can feel safe in their community. Okay, we're not having a big problem with crime, but apparently, even though there is a problem with police that are basically unaccountable for their behavior, Trump wants to fund more law enforcement, remove barriers that protect people from the police, basically, and things like that. Making government accountable. Oh, okay, well, yeah. Hiring lobbyists for all their jobs is not making anything accountable. Combating opioids. He hasn't done anything about that. Protecting life. Okay, this is an abortion thing. Serving our country's veterans, not doing that. Promoting peace through strength. This is all about macho posturing and selfishness. There are no grand vision here. Restore respect for America, United States throughout the world. He has done none of that. Okay. I'm sorry. I was hoping there'd be something, at least lip service to some grand vision. Instead, what we have here is an entire list of things that they're trying to make sound like good things. So going around and threatening other countries is considered restoring respect. Basically, making them afraid of what we're going to do next is restoring respect. It's really weird. So let's go back to the moral and ethics thing. Here's an article that this is something that's been in the news lately, but this is something that you need to be thinking about when you consider morals and ethics and immigration. This is entitled, Doctor Compares Conditions for Children at Immigrant Holding Centers to Torture Facilities. From sleeping on concrete floors with the lights on 24 hours a day. Okay, let's just editorial aside. First, sleeping on a concrete floor. Mattress? No. Pad of some sort? No. With lights on 24 hours a day. So that is very much like torture. When do you get to sleep? Do you put a blanket over your head? How do you block out light? To no access to soap or basic hygiene, migrant children in at least 2 U.S. and Customs and Border Protection facilities face conditions one doctor described as comparable to torture facilities. The disturbing first-hand account of the conditions were observed by lawyers and a board-certified physician in visits last week to Border Patrol holding facilities in Clint, Texas, and McAllen, a city in the southern part of the state. The descriptions paint a bleak image of horrific conditions for children, the youngest of whom is 2.5 months old. Quote, the conditions within which they are held could be compared to torture facilities, the physician, Dale Lucio Servier, wrote in a medical declaration obtained exclusively by ABC News. Lucio Servier, who works in private practice in the area, was granted access to the Ursula facility in McAllen, which is the largest CBP detention center in the country, after lawyers found out about a flu outbreak there that sent 5 infants to the neonatal intensive care unit. After assessing 39 children under the age of 18, she described conditions for unaccompanied minors at the McAllen facility as including extreme cold temperatures, lights on 24 hours a day, no adequate access to medical care, basic sanitation, water, or adequate food. All the children who were seen showed evidence of trauma, and the teens spoke of having no access to hand washing during their entire time in custody. She compared it to being tantamount to intentionally causing the spread of disease. In an interview with ABC News, she said the facility felt worse than jail. It just felt, lawless, she said. I mean, imagine your own children there. I can't imagine my child being there and not being broken. Conditions for infants were even more appalling, according to the medical declaration. Many teen mothers in custody described not having the ability to wash their children's bottle, and children who were older than 6 months were not provided age-appropriate meal options, including no pureed foods necessary for a child's development. To deny parents the ability to wash their infants' bottles is unconscionable and could be considered intentional mental and emotional abuse. The attorneys who represent the children threatened to sue the government if it denied a visit from a physician. They are part of a team working under the Flores Settlement Agreement, a 1997 ruling that stipulated detention standards for unaccompanied minors, including being held for less than 72 hours and in the least restrictive setting appropriate to the child's age and special needs. As part of the ruling, the lawyers, who are part of a class action lawsuit, represent all children in custody and, as such, are allowed to visit and interview them. Lucio Sevier has no connection to the lawyers aside from their request for a physician to be granted access. The legal team, also from the Flores Settlement Agreement Group, had negotiated access to the Clint facility in advance, and officials from CBP knew of their pending arrival for weeks. The alleged conditions documented at the facilities follow a Homeland Security Inspector General report that found dangerous overcrowding and unsanitary conditions at a different CBP facility in El Paso, Texas, where hundreds more migrants were being housed than the center was designed to hold. The El Paso del Norte Processing Center housed as many as 900 migrant detainees earlier this month, despite only having a recommended capacity for 125. The report comes as President Donald Trump continues to make immigration a staple of his administration and a key issue in his re-election bid. After threatening to deport more than 2,000 undocumented immigrants and then extending the deadline by 2 weeks, the president on Sunday tweeted his intention to fix the southern border. Quote, I want to give the Democrats every last chance to quickly negotiate simple changes to asylum and loopholes. This will fix the southern border, together with the help that Mexico is now giving us. Probably won't happen, but worth a try. 2 weeks and big deportations begin. Later in the day, the president blamed his predecessor for implementing the policy of separating migrants. Trump said he ended the policy too. This is not true. Neither of these are true. But anyway, he said, quote, under President Obama, you had separation. I was the one that ended it, he told reporters. The Obama administration's policy only separated families in rare circumstances when the child's safety might be at risk. Last April, the Trump administration and his Attorney General at the time, Jeff Sessions, enacted a zero-tolerance approach that called for stepped-up prosecutions of any adult crossing the border illegally. As a result, 27 children were separated from their families in a matter of weeks. More than a year later, though, documents from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, obtained by immigration rights groups and the Houston Chronicle through a Freedom of Information Act request, show family separations are still happening, even after a court ordered children to be reunited with their parents. The documents showed more than 700 children were separated from parents between last June and May, often with questionable legal justification. The CBP, however, said in a statement it has limited resources and is leveraging all of them to provide the best care possible to those in our custody, especially children. As Department of Homeland Security and CBP leadership have noted numerous times, our short-term holding facilities were not designed to hold vulnerable populations, and we urgently need additional humanitarian funding to manage this crisis, the statement read. CBP works closely with our partners at the Department of Health and Human Services to transfer unaccompanied children to their custody as soon as placement is identified, and as quickly and expeditiously as possible to ensure proper care. All allegations of civil rights abuses or mistreatment in CBP detention are taken seriously and investigated to the fullest extent possible. Well, yeah, I could go on and on. But, yeah, there's a lot more here. I've run out of time. I'm sorry. So anyway, what I'm hoping, I didn't do a very good job of framing this, but what I'm really hoping is that as you think about this topic over the coming week or on into the future, you will consider it from a moral and ethical standpoint. And you will stop allowing people to try to reframe it as convenience or as necessity. So, for example, the child separation policy intentionally creates a situation where there are lots of children that have to be dealt with somehow. They can only be dealt with so fast. It is only possible to find placement for them, to find this, for that. So the end result is they end up staying in places like this where they're crammed together, where they're improperly cared for. They live in horrific conditions. That is the result of the intentional policy that puts them in that position. And to claim that they need more money, well, yeah, if you create a problem where it's like you are housing these people and you have more and more people to house because you're locking more and more people up, then yes, you have a crisis of more and more people being locked up. And it has to be dealt with somehow. So what do? You ask for more money, or you ask to change laws to make it harder for people to come here or whatever. It is creating a problem and then trying to force the solution, the predetermined solution that you want. But creating the problem in the first place is profoundly immoral. Profoundly immoral. And I cannot stress that enough. And I thank you for listening, and we'll see you again.